we go any further, I wanted to say a few things about flavors in general. For some of you, this is, of course, something that you've heard many a time, but for some of you, it's not. And so both as a refresher and also to flesh things out a bit for everyone, I wanted to talk a little bit about flavors. So flavors are part of a bigger exploration of essentially bringing the body to expression, to physical expression, emotional expression, mental expression. And within the context of embodiment, flavors are one way to really define and expand one's personal expression. So, of course, there's many ways we can expand personal expression, but when we talk about embodied personal expression, we are, of course, having to bring the body to the occasion. You can think all you want about being more of who you are, but that's not training the body to do so. And that's, of course, something that we in general find when we're learning something new. When we learn something new, we have to practice it, repeat it over and over and over till it becomes part of your programming, so to speak. So when it comes to, let's say, something like, I don't know, a new dance move, if you're a dancer, or working out, if you want to go and learn how to lift weights. The way to establish that habit in an ideal world is that somebody shows you how to do it. And then when, let's say, weightlifting, right? So you learn how to do it. Somebody shows you how to do it with good form. And then you do it. And as you do it, you'll notice that it's unfamiliar. So you'll have a little bit of a stress response on one end. But you also are going to have to get possibly adjusted, because you might, particularly with weightlifting, if you do it wrong, you might hurt yourself. So the process is you do it, you get adjusted, maybe you learn it from somebody who's really good at it, or you're experimenting together, you get the proper form, then you repeat it over and over and over. And at some point, it's part of your, your body, mind, and makeup. This is true for everything, and this is certainly true for embodiment of different expressions of who we are. And so flavors can be seen as kind of the spices that allow us to cook with a great variety of expressions. Why is that useful? Well, there's many reasons why it's useful, one of which, of course, is that the more of us can come out to play and the more aspects of us we have available, the more we're able to express the fullness of us. And that's not only important in relationship where it's usually mentioned, right? It's considered that flavors are one of the ways you can keep a relationship interesting, and one of the ways you can keep a sexual relationship spiced up. But that's a small fraction of what we're looking at, because long before we get to the relational part, there is the part of us being with ourselves in a way that feels good and that feels interesting, and that also feels like we are evolving and growing into something that we enjoy. And in the context of that, practicing flavors is kind of a self-inquiry of sorts, where we can see what are some aspects that we'd like to bring out more, what are some aspects that we're a bit stunted perhaps, what are some aspects that are unfamiliar to us, what are some aspects we know about but we want to kind of polish. So all of those things within flavors are a practice that one can physically engage with. And as I was saying yesterday, and when you sorted your cards, there are different categories. We have what I call home flavor. And our home flavor is the flavor that is us when we are relaxed, open, happy, available. I often talk about, it's the flavor that you display when no one's watching you. And that flavor is what we call the home flavor. And so there's typically a few strands of your home flavor that combine to kind of your particular expression. No two home flavors are ever alike, obviously, right? You're uniquely you. A lot goes into where you land on the home flavor. And some of it has to do with things like, where you grew up. Also your hair color, for instance, has something to do with it, because different hair colors have different textures of weight, because it's, light to dark is a weight, is meaning, light is very light and also lighter in color, and dark is dark and darker in color, dark as in heavy. And so different, hair colors, which is why sometimes when people dye their hair blonde, they suddenly feel much, much lighter. And they themselves sometimes feel lighter because it's a hair color thing. But other things fall into that, like where's your center of gravity in the body? How do you move through life? How much meat do you eat, for instance, right? Versus being vegan or things like that. All of that plays into the weight, and then its disposition, preferences, your upbringing, the things you like, all of that. So it's a super unique, it's like a thumbprint, your home flavor. And why is it useful to know your home flavor? Well, first of all, that's your natural joyous expression. And so to be able to kind of polish and bring out and also revere your natural joyous expression is very important. And that's what we did today, is we looked at your natural joyous expression. And within the context of that, you can kind of fluff out your natural joyous expression by looking at the resonant flavors like we did today, and then kind of adding those resonant flavors to your natural expression so you're a little bit more fluffed out, right? So that's what we did today. And that's useful because sometimes we get into a bit of a rut with even the best of flavors, right? We dress the same way, we do the same things, we move the same way, just because it's our home flavor and it's natural and it's easy and it doesn't take effort. And often, because it doesn't take effort, it doesn't necessarily develop. So fluffing out and developing the home flavor is a good first step when we look into flavor practice. Then, of course, we can say, well, do you want to be more than your home flavor? Not just by fluffing out the home flavor bit, but do you want to be totally different things as well? If the answer is yes, then we have to look at how would you do that and why would you do that? So as to the why, because we are absolutely everything, right? This is all available. All flavors are available to us as humans. And isn't it nice to have lots of range? Right? Why wouldn't you want to have lots of range? Because the more range there is, the more experience there is. And the more experience there is, the fuller and more interesting our life is. We're just talking about ourselves. Then, of course, we can talk about how it shows up, not only in intimate relationship, but also in, let's say, business, or how we deal with friends, or how we deal with children, or, in public situations. So the more you have available, the fuller and more holistic or integrated you can be. So, for instance, last time we were here, we came in through Lisbon, and we were told, or you found it, or something like that. We had to go to this restaurant, fish restaurant. It was so loud. It was crazy loud, but it wasn't like the obnoxious loudness that you sometimes see in restaurants. It was people having like a genuinely grand time together eating. Right. And, they had like hammers for the crabs and like big, like you had these little plastic blocks and a hammer and like people like bashing on the poor crabs. And, it was a total scene. And there were whole tables full of people just loud. And so we are in there, right? And we're still pretty jet lagged at that point too. And, it's loud and there's hammers. And so eventually I got kind of into the flavor of that crowd and went with the being loud and being like over the top loud. And it was so fun to be like that, like full on, like screaming across the table at poor AJ and Steve across. Or you sat across from me. I'm like, do you want another crab? And yeah, so you can try out different flavors to feel what different flavors do in the body. And that particular flavor was hugely enlivening. So I could feel the enlivening quality from the other people, and then doing it, myself could really get that and what that meant, and that joy and that boisterous thing, which is something that you don't always want to do. Certainly that's not the flavor to put on in a public library, for instance, but it's a useful flavor to have under your belt.